Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do something with sand casting that's a little more technical than you usually see. And that's to have, say, a wax like this that has a hole in it for either putting maybe a head, a bezel, or a stone directly in there. I also like to have a sprue already attached to the wax, but it's not necessary. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to start with the positive side of the flask that's got the rim on it, and that's going to go down just like that. We're just going to take a little bit of the clay, and I like to take like a tart tamper and push it down. Then we'll take a little more, and at this point I like to use the end of a mandrel. Okay, that was not good, but we're just going to keep going. Okay, scrape that off. Now we have this here. Just clean that off right there. This is where our sprue area is going to go. So now we take the talc. Don't want to breathe that in. Now the big thing here, and what flipped off, was a long piece of dowel. So you would take that dowel and you'd cut a piece off, and the piece you want, you got to figure this out ahead of time, but you want it to come through the bottom but not go past where the finger would sit there. And then you also want to have it kind of butt up against the edge of the flask there. Now this particular type of wax is fairly soft, but if we take our tart tamper and we push directly on it, we can actually safely push it down into the clay. And you want to get it to where this right here, your dowel, is about halfway in, maybe a tad bit more. Okay, just like that. So now we get our other side of the flask. Make sure there's nothing along here that's going to get in the way. Put that on. It only goes on one way. Take your talc. Put it down on there really well. The injection wax, which this is, has a tendency to stick. So I put a lot of extra talc in there if I can. Now we'll start off with just a little bit in here. Take the tart tamper again. Push it down in there really well. I've got the camera on the same setup as the flask, and every time I hammer it jiggles it. You'd think after all these videos I would have figured this out, but I guess not. Okay. Pound that down good. Scrape it off. Now I like to have it resting on the metal block there, and we pull it straight out. Ooh, that was not good. But it's good you see this. So what we're going to do, because it's not the end of the road here, we're going to pick that up. We're going to set it on there just like that. I'm glad this happened, because if you take your time, which I'm not going to do because it's a kind of a quick video here, you could do it better than this, but it gives you an idea that just because that happens doesn't mean you have to quit and start over. Blow out any extra in there. So now we've got that, and then we're going to press in with our thumb, create our funnel here. I like to have all the edges rounded. If they're rounded, then there's less chance of molten metal breaking a corner off. And so we're just going to set that aside for now. We'll move on to this side. Still have our dowel in there. Kind of loosen that up. The problem with the stickier wax like this is, and that's why we had that problem on the other side, is it kind of sticks to the clay a little more. So you got to do things a little slower. Again, I'm moving a little faster than normal. Okay. So at this point, we can go ahead and we'll make our funnel here with our thumb. We'll round off these edges here. And then what we're going to do, we're going to take a toothpick and really take away, but not all the way up to the piece. Just, we're going to create these vents that almost go to the piece. Just like that. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a business card. It's nice and thin. Make some very small vents here. And these vents are going to release the air buildup and the gases, which are formed when you're pouring molten metal. Just like that. Okay, so the next thing, we have our little dowel here. Take it out of the wax, set it in, and so now you would take the two halves, you could put them together, and that dowel will actually, even though it's wood, you could use graphite as well, but even though it's wood, the metal will go in, it'll go around it, but it won't burn it enough to the point where you won't have your hole. So it actually forms the hole, and you end up with a nice casting with the hole in it. So I guess I'll leave it at this point. Hopefully you learned something. All right, thanks.